Timothy William Dexter, who would later become infamously known as Timothy Treadwell, was born on April 29, 1957, in Mineola, New York. One of 5 children, Timothy was noted as excelling in many areas as a child, even being named as the star diver of his high school swim team. From a young age, he had been very fond of animals and kept a squirrel named Willie as a pet. In a 2005 interview, his parents described him as an ordinary young man, who had begun to change after he went away to college. Whilst here, he had claimed to his peers that he was a British orphan. On another occasion, he had claimed to have been from Australia. It seemed that he was trying to get attention by making up lies about himself. Timothy also had ambitions of being famous. He loved to have all eyes on him. According to an account later on by his father, he said that Timothy had spiraled down and became an alcoholic after losing out on the role of Woody Boyd to Woody Harrelson in the sitcom Cheers, a role that would have catapulted him into stardom. By the late 1980s, Timothy had survived a near-fatal heroin overdose and decided to turn his life around by focusing on a new ambition. He decided to move to Alaska after a close friend convinced him to do so. His mission was to watch bears. According to his book published in 1997, Among Grizzlies, Living with Wild Bears in Alaska, he wrote that after his first encounter with a wild bear, he knew he had found his calling in life, and that now his destiny was entwined with those of the bears. In a way, the bears had given him a purpose, and he attributed his recovery from drug and alcohol addictions entirely to his relationship with bears. For 13 summers, Timothy spent the early part of each season camping on what he branded the Big Green. This was an open area of grass in Hello Bay, on the Alaskan Katmai coast, often frequented by the bears he was tracking. Due to the high number of bear traffic, Timothy called the area Grizzly Sanctuary. He would record raw footage of his encounters in a series of films, using them to educate the public about the challenges bears face in North America. The more time that Timothy spent with the bears, the more confident he felt being in their presence. He was known for getting extremely close to the bears that he observed, sometimes even going as far as to touch them or play with the bear cubs. In his book, he claimed that he was always careful with the bears and developed a sense of mutual trust and respect with the animals. He habitually named each bear he encountered, and consistently saw many of the same bears each summer. In his mind, he was bonded with them. By 2001, Timothy Treadwell was also achieving what he had originally wanted: to be famous. Through his filmmaking and advocating for the wild animals he loved so dearly, he had started to receive extensive media attention both on television and in environmental circles, and he made frequent public appearances as an environmental activist. Whilst Timothy had hoped to change people's perception of wild bears, he also faced much scrutiny, mostly from experts who warned him repeatedly about the dangers that he faced, all of which were dismissed by Timothy. Research ecologist Tom Smith, who worked for the Alaskan Science Center, stated that Timothy was breaking every park rule that there was, in terms of distance to the bears, harassing wildlife and interfering with natural processes. When each season drew to a close, Timothy would move to Kaflia Bay and set up camp in an area of thick brush he called the Grizzly Maze. His chances of crossing paths with a bear were much higher in this region, as it was a main point of bear trails. Timothy managed to record over 100 hours of video footage, most of which was used to create the 2005 documentary, Grizzly Man. This was a documentary made by German director Werner Herzog on the life and mission of Timothy Treadwell. Timothy had claimed to be alone with the wildlife in his videos, but in his last 3 summers, his girlfriend, Amy Huguenard, who was a physician's assistant, was also present. In October of 2003, Timothy, along with Amy, visited Katmai National Park, setting up their campsite near a salmon stream, where wild bears commonly hunted for fish in autumn. Against all odds, it seemed that Timothy was defying any expectations against him, silencing critics, but it would only be a matter of time before his time spent brushing shoulders with the inevitable came to an end. Timothy recorded in a diary that Amy was afraid of bears and was uncomfortable in their presence. Her own journal entries indicated that she wanted to be away from Katmai. The couple had been due to travel to the home they shared in California to store their gear for the season on September the 26th, but had returned after an argument with the airline over a price increase on their return tickets. Due to this, the couple had returned to the campsite for an additional week. This placed them in the park later in the year than they usually were, at a time when the bears would gouge as much food as they could, gaining fat to keep them warm through the winter months. Food was also scarce that autumn, which had caused the bears' behavior to be more aggressive than usual. Although their plans to return home were foiled, Timothy didn't mind too much. He hated modern society and felt more at ease with the bears than he did with humans. The bears that Timothy had been familiarized with throughout the summer, however, had now gone into hibernation, and bears which Timothy did not know were now moving into the area from other parts of the park. Some of the last footage recorded by Timothy showed one bear diving into the river repeatedly for a piece of dead salmon. Timothy mentioned that he did not entirely trust that particular bear. It would be speculated later on whether this was the bear in which Timothy would soon have an encounter that would rewrite his legacy forever. At around 12 p.m. on Sunday the 5th of October, 2003, Timothy's last known contact came when he spoke with a friend in Malibu, California, by satellite phone. During the call, he mentioned no problems with any bears. The next day, an air taxi pilot named Willie Fulton arrived at the campsite of Timothy and Amy to pick them up and take them to the airport, but found that the area was abandoned, except for a bear lurking close by. He alerted local park rangers who made their way down to the campsite. When rangers arrived, they quickly discovered a horrific scene. Timothy's disfigured head, partial spine and right forearm and hand, with his wristwatch still on, lay a short distance from the camp. Amy's mangled remains were found next to the now torn and collapsed tents. She had been partially buried in a mound of soil and twigs, an act carried out by bears to hide the carcasses of their prey and mask the smell from other predators. They will then often move a short distance away, to rest in nearby areas of dense brush or forest. The large bear, first reported by the air pilot, was still protecting the campsite when park rangers arrived. They proceeded to shoot the bear in order to retrieve the couple's remains. A second adolescent bear was also killed when it charged at the park rangers. An autopsy was conducted at the site on the bear who was found at the scene. It revealed human body parts such as fingers and limbs, along with clothing. The other bear who had charged at the rangers was eaten by other animals before an autopsy could be carried out. In Katmai National Park's 85-year history, this was the first known incident of a person being killed by a bear. To accompany their disturbing find, a video footage recovered from the site was found to have been operating during the attack. Whilst the 6-minute tape did not capture the visuals of the couple's deaths, it did contain the blood-curdling screams of both victims. As the lens cap was still on, it is believed that the couple were either in the process of setting up to record more footage or Amy had tried to turn it on with the attack in process. The tape began with Timothy shouting out to Amy that he was being attacked.
"Come out here! I'm being killed out here!"
The tape continued with the sound of a zipper evident, the noise of the tent opening. Timothy's agonized screams follow, as Amy frantically calls out for Timothy to play dead, but in his desperation for help, he does not. Again, Amy can be heard shouting to Timothy,
"Play dead!"
It would be an almost superhuman thing to be able to lay still whilst a bear ripped into you, tearing at your flesh, but Timothy eventually managed to calm down. The bear appeared to break off the attack and words were exchanged between Timothy and Amy, who were trying to determine whether the bear had really left. It is believed that at this point, Amy had rushed to Timothy's aid. Being a surgical physician's assistant, she would be better equipped to deal with the situation than most. Unfortunately, the final sounds on the tape indicate the bear's return. Amy was forced to retreat whilst the bear returned to her boyfriend. Timothy could be heard screaming again and begging Amy to get something to hit the bear with. She screamed as the sound of an object being thrown rang on the tape. Timothy did not die quickly and his death could be heard for 2/3 of the 6-minute tape before it cut out from low battery. He was fully conscious and suffering throughout the entirety of the ordeal whilst low grunts and growls can be heard from the bear. The tape ended with the sounds of dragging and the fading of Timothy's cries as it carried him into the brush. His fate was now sealed. Amy's hysterical screams rang out as she watched the man she loved being taken by the beast. A wildlife biologist who later listened to the tape likened Amy's eerie screams to that of a predator call, a device carried by hunters to produce the distress cries of a small, wounded animal, which often attracts bears. He theorized that it was these shrieks which may have prompted the bear to return and kill her. Jewel Palvinac, a longtime friend of Timothy's, is in possession of the tape. She has stated that she had never listened to it and has no intentions to do so. She did, however, allow filmmaker Werner Herzog, who made the Grizzly Bear documentary on Timothy, listen to the recording during a taped interview. He could not, however, handle listening to the disturbing tape and asked for it to be turned off partway through. The tape has never been released to the public. Thanks for watching. If you want to see more videos, please like and subscribe to support the channel.